We are going to look at this incredible survey that went out by the Wall Street Journal. It was done by the National Opinion Research Center out of the University of Chicago. This is like a very legit poll that went out. Lots and lots of people answered. And what they were measuring was how happy people are. And here's what they found. They found that 30% of people rated themselves at the lowest level of happiness. And so again, this wasn't like this wasn't a poll from miserable and depressed to very happy. It was just measuring happiness. So the lowest level of happiness is the lowest thing you could answer on this poll, which was not too happy. Don't like how life is going. Like pretty hopeless, pretty helpless, pretty despondent. A majority of people, so that was 30%, a majority of people, 56% said they're pretty happy. You know, they've got good days and bad days. It fluctuates. We know a little bit about how polling works, which is people usually answer like maybe a little bit more optimistically than they actually are. And so some percentage of that 56 could probably fall into the 30%. However, when it came to very happy, which is the highest level, that was only 12%. 12% of Americans say they are very happy. And I think that 12% is quite trustworthy because you got to know what you're saying to mark yourself as very happy. The people who kind of split the middle, the 56%, they probably lean a little bit one way or the other and probably towards not as happy. Because if they were very happy, you know it, man. You know if you're living a very happy life. You know if you are fulfilled. And these numbers have dropped really drastically. Like they have sank by like double in the past 6 years. And so people are getting less and less and less and less happy. And it's really interesting because we point out a lot of things, but the one thing that we normally don't talk about in the conversations culturally are the actual cultural issues, like people's worldview and how they view things and how families are faring. And so here are some interesting things that they found about the very small number, the 12% of people who are very, very happy. Number one, 2/3 highly value marriage. Less than 50% of unhappy people have that same value. So the people who are like only pretty happy or not happy at all, almost a majority of them do not view marriage highly. And that is the way our culture is going. Is marriage is seen as like the worst contract that you can sign, and it's a terrible arrangement, and you're just signing up to only be able to have sex with one person for the rest of your life. And why would you do that? And people aren't even wired to do that. Men aren't even wired to do that. Men are wired to be polyamorous. And so why would they lock themselves down? And women like lose all their control, and it's a terrible bargain for women, and it's a terrible bargain for men because if it ends, then she'll take half of your stuff, or if you're a woman and you're a high earner, he might take half of your stuff, and people are just moving away from the idea of marriage altogether, and less people are getting married. And yet 2/3 of the people who are highly happy, very happy with their life, they highly value the idea of marriage, even if they're not married themselves. 67% highly value marriage. 2/3 strongly believe in God. It's like central to their life. Again, what do we see in our culture? We are moving into a post-Christian and now a pre-pagan nation. So we've moved away from God. And now, like, the people who are the butt of the jokes are people who still believe in God, who believe in some sky daddy up there, some fairy in the sky who's granting our magical wishes or whatever. It's seen as ludicrous. And so everyone's moving away from that. And yet 2/3, this huge majority of people who are very happy, have God as the central orienting factor of their life. One other thing that they found in the very happy people is that the majority are content with their finances. They don't have this huge like longing for and lust after material possessions and money. And that was not correlated to wealth. It's not like these people who are very happy are all wealthy. As a matter of fact, whether or not you're very happy or not happy at all wasn't correlated to your income or to your net worth. And so not only that, but you might think, well, okay, so they're married and they like marriage and they like God, and they don't care too much about money, but they maybe have just had it easier in life. And the study found that's not the case at all either, that a huge number of the people who said they were very happy are like right now going through very, very difficult things. Very difficult health problems, very difficult problems in their family, going through, all of the the tension and things that would cause most people to be very unhappy. And so it wasn't correlated to wealth. It wasn't correlated to net worth. It wasn't correlated to whether or not the sun was shining and butterflies floating every day in their life was just perfect, like some fairy tale. No. What it was correlated to was a high view and value on marriage, a high view and value of God, and a low value on material possessions and money. And so not getting married, to go back to McConaughey, can be called a failure to launch. That's what that whole movie was about, is he's trying to live this single bachelor life, and it's a rom-com, so he falls in love and he does the whole thing. But this is just ancient wisdom. Cultural issues, which is we're more depressed and we're more anxious and we're more suicidal and we're more lonely. Statistically, we're moving the wrong way in every single direction. And this very legitimate research center finds that the very happy people in life, what do? They get married and highly value marriage. They have a strong belief in God, and they put a low value on material possessions. Well, let's see what scripture has to say about that. In Genesis 2, at the very beginning of things, the man said, "This one at last is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. This person belongs to me. This one will be called woman. I belong to her, for she was taken from man." And this is why a man leaves his father and mother and bonds with his wife, and they become one. Mutuality. Faithful, monogamous, loving marriage. This was designed from the very beginning to be co-equals, to be, you might have heard at the very beginning of Genesis that Eve, the woman, is called the helpmate. In the Hebrew, that literally means a helpful adversary, someone to challenge you, to help you grow, to lovingly correct you, to come alongside of you. This is a high view, and all of Scripture has like the highest view of marriage that you can have. As a matter of fact, marriage is the very metaphor that is used for Jesus, the groom, and his bride, his church, the people who are a part of the movement of Jesus. In Psalm 144 and all throughout Scripture, happy are the people. Happy. This is what the University of Chicago was measuring. Who's very happy? Happy are the people whose God is the Lord. I mean, this is just right back to ancient wisdom. Here's what about money in Ecclesiastes 5:10. The one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. The one who loves silver, the one who has this high value on money and material possessions, whoever loves wealth, it says they will never be satisfied. And that's what we find, because when you don't have this clear view of how life works, and when you don't have a transcendent grounding for your life, and when you don't have a purpose outside of the purposes that culture gives you, then you will always live for what's next, and you will always live for more, and more will never be enough, and money will never make you content. And when you finally get the raise, and you finally double your salary, and you finally triple your salary, and you live in the bigger house, and you drive the newer car, it still will not satisfy you. Not getting married, having this low view of marriage and just thinking it is this arcane, terrible, patriarchal institution. Good luck with that, because statistically, you're putting yourself in a position to be less and less happy. Many of the very happy people, very happy, are going through real struggles and real suffering, but they have hope outside of the hope that is offered in this world, the fleeting, non-transcendent hope. Spirituality and marriage, they give a sense of belonging, and they give a sense of purpose. And then an emphasis on God in your life takes the emphasis off of money and material possessions. We are, to quote an ancient story, we are all living with King Midas syndrome. We want everything we touch to turn to gold. And you have to remember that the Midas touch was a curse, not a blessing. And if you don't have a high value on relationship and a high value on marriage, then you can get all of the gold and silver in the world. If you don't have something outside of you that you're living for, some kind of hope for life after life, something transcendent to ground your life, then the worst thing that could happen to you is everything you touch could turn to gold. You remember the story of King Midas, and he was met by one of the, I guess, Greek gods, and he wished to have the Midas touch. Everything he touched turned to gold. And pretty soon he learned he couldn't eat, because everything he grabbed to try to eat would turn to gold. And he was so depressed that his daughter came and hugged him. She turned to gold, and he lost relationship. This is what happens. This is what Ecclesiastes is warning about. And this is what, as we become more affluent in the West, this is exactly what we are experiencing. And so you can stop doing these three things and live a happier life. You can stop running away from marriage. And if you're already married, you can put a higher and higher value on your marriage, where it is now in second place only to your relationship with God. For so many people, they come and I'm a pastor and I help a lot of people who are struggling in their marriages. And what I find almost every single time is their marriage just is not the priority. Their hobby is the priority, their friends are the priority, their work is the priority. You should have the highest view of marriage possible because God had the highest view of marriage. Stop living with the culture's pre-pagan worldview. This idea that all that there is what we can see and touch and feel and explore and see under a microscope, that there's nothing transcendent, this materialist, humanist, atheistic worldview that is leading to nihilism and misery. And stop finding your value in money and possessions. You stop doing those three things, and you will begin to live a much, much better life.